Have you ever wondered if the struggles in your marriage are just normal ups and downs, or if something deeper might be going on? How do you know if some of your relationship issues could actually be due to your husband's past trauma? Here's the thing: a traumatic childhood leaves profound marks on a person's emotional health. The coping mechanisms they used to survive that childhood don't just disappear. They often show up years later in adult relationships. But before we get into the early signs to watch for, there's something really important I want you to know. Men disclose childhood abuse at a much greater age than women. In fact, the average age that men disclose child sexual abuse is 52 years of age. So, what does that mean for you as a partner? It means you could be living in a marriage where you suspect your husband has experienced trauma, but he hasn't been able to share it yet, or maybe even admit it to himself yet. And that can leave you in patterns that you just don't understand. You might find yourself second guessing your own reactions, feeling confused, or even doubting your sanity because you don't have the full picture. And that's why this conversation is so important. In today's episode, I'm going to walk you through the early signs that trauma may be affecting your marriage and what you can start doing differently once you see them. Here's the thing I didn't realize for the longest time: trauma doesn't just stay in the past. When someone grows up with it, their nervous system learns survival patterns, and those patterns show up in their marriage, whether they want them to or not. But back then, I didn't know that. All I knew was what I was living through every single day. For me, it looked like walking on eggshells. I never quite knew what was going to set my husband off. A simple comment about how to load the dishwasher or a question about weekend plans could suddenly explode into a huge reaction. I felt like I was tiptoeing around his emotions, kind of like trying to avoid landmines. It also looked like conflicts that came out of nowhere. So something small, like who was picking up the kids, could turn into a massive argument. And I couldn't understand why the intensity was so out of proportion. He'd get defensive or shut down completely, and I'd be left spinning. And then there was the withdrawal. I finally muster enough courage to bring something up, and then I'd get silence, hours, sometimes days of silence. And it was like I didn't even exist in my own marriage, and the silence was almost worse than the arguments. There were mistrust and control patterns too. So even when I felt like I was trying to help, it felt like he just didn't trust my intentions, or he'd need things done a very specific way. And if I didn't get it right, it would turn into another fight. And after the blowups came the shame spirals. He'd collapse into guilt and say things like, "I'm just the problem," or "you'd be better off without me." And then I'd end up scrambling to reassure him while my own needs went unmet. At the time, I didn't see any of this as trauma. From the outside, it just looked like quirks in his personality, or worse, that maybe I was the problem. But underneath all of it, it was his nervous system replaying old survival strategies. The part of him that had learned long ago that safety was never guaranteed. And when that got triggered in our marriage, both of us got pulled into the same exhausting loop: conflict, withdraw, shame, repeat. I didn't know it then, but that was trauma showing up in our marriage. And once I finally understood that, everything started to make more sense. So when I look back now, I can see all these signs that trauma was shaping our marriage. But at the time, I had no idea. Number one, he avoided talking about his childhood. Whenever I'd ask, I'd hear it was fine or pretty normal, or I just don't remember that much about my childhood. And I thought he just didn't like sharing. But avoidance was actually protection. And in some cases, he truly did not remember part of his childhood. Sign number two, he needed to control the relationship. So many of our fights were about control. And at the time, I felt like he didn't trust me. But now I know control was his way of creating safety in a world that once felt dangerous. He was trying to control for his own safety. It actually didn't have anything to do with me. Sign number 3, he pushed me away when I tried to get close. This one hurt the most because just when I reached in, he'd retreat. And I thought I was too much. The truth was, vulnerability didn't feel safe for him. It was really hard for him to trust when the people that he trusted in his childhood took advantage of him. Sign number 4, his reactions felt way too big. Simple issues became huge arguments. Things that other couples seemed to be able to figure out, we couldn't. And it was his nervous system that was not reacting to me, it was reacting to old wounds. Sign number 5, the withdrawal that I was talking about was like a switch flipping. After some fights, he'd just disappear emotionally, hours, even days. And I thought it was stonewalling. I thought it was him giving me the silent treatment, but it was actually dissociation, which he had learned in childhood. And in some cases, it was also protecting me from the emotions that he felt deep within that he did not want to come out. Sign number 6, mental health struggles and coping mechanisms. Depression, anxiety, difficulty sleeping, numbing with work or alcohol. I saw them all, and I didn't realize how deeply trauma fueled them. And sign number 7, the normal relationship tools that I read everywhere. I was researching, I was reading books, I was doing podcasts, watching podcasts, anything I could get my hands on. And I would try those tools, but they didn't work. I tried love languages, communication books, and nothing landed. Trauma had rewired how he experienced love and connection. All the time, none of these screamed trauma to me. They looked like quirks or challenges or incompatibilities. But trauma was the thread tying them all together. And once I saw that, I could stop blaming myself or him and finally understand. So here's what I need you to hear. If you're seeing these patterns in your marriage, it doesn't mean your relationship is broken. It doesn't mean you married the wrong person. And it doesn't mean you're failing as a partner. What it does mean is that trauma is showing up. All those things, walking on eggshells, big reactions, silence, mistrust, shame spirals, they're not quirks. They're survival strategies. They once kept your partner safe, but now they're chipping away at your relationship. The real enemy here is not your husband, and it isn't you. The real enemy is the unresolved trauma that's still running the show. And here's the hopeful part. Once you can name it, everything starts to shift. It's not about blame anymore. It's about creating safety. And that's when things begin to change. So, what can you do if trauma is showing up in your marriage? First is awareness. Just naming it for what it is brings relief. Second, I want you to shift from blame to curiosity. Instead of, you always shut down, try, I've noticed that you get quiet when things are hard. Can you tell me what's going on? And third, get support. Trauma is too heavy to navigate alone. Therapy, coaching, safe community, these can change everything. And fourth, I want you to focus on emotional safety and not perfection. You don't need flawless communication. You need a foundation where it's safe to say, I'm triggered right now, without it turning into a war. Even small shifts, awareness, curiosity, and safety can begin to change everything. If you're seeing these patterns, avoiding the past, control dynamics, pushing you away, extreme reactions, withdrawal, mental health struggles, or even love languages that don't seem to work, I want you to know this. It doesn't mean your marriage is doomed. It doesn't mean you're unlovable, and it doesn't mean your partner doesn't care. It means that trauma may be showing up in your relationship in ways you couldn't see before. And here's the good news: once you can spot the signs, you can start responding differently. You can stop carrying the blame and start building safety, connection, and hope. Remember, you're not just building a marriage, you're building a legacy of understanding, patience, and love. And that's worth every single step. If you want to go deeper, I've created a free guide just for you. It's called Spotting the Signs: How a Traumatic Past May Be Impacting Your Relationship. And inside, I break down these several ways that trauma shows up, and I give you simple, practical steps to begin shifting those patterns today. And you can grab it right now. The link is in the description below.